After the party, they head to the dinner that the company owner will be hosting in their honor at his home. Isabel, knowing Pedro will be there, and knowing him very well, fears that he will lose control and cause a scandal. Therefore, she decides to confess to her husband that Pedro was her boyfriend, whom she left over 6 months ago to marry him, thus fulfilling the agreement between their families. She begs him that if Pedro gets drunk and causes disturbance, he will please remain calm. Upon arriving at the dinner venue, they were greeted by the owner of the house, his wife, and their only daughter, Jennifer. The other guests were waiting for them in the dining room, including Pedro, who greeted them very courteously. They all sat down to dinner and shared a few drinks amidst a very pleasant conversation. Suddenly, after about 30 minutes, someone announced that someone at the door was looking for Pedro and said they urgently needed to speak with him. Tension filled the air as soon as it was announced that someone was urgently looking for Pedro. Everyone present turned their gazes toward him, who placed his glass on the table with a look of surprise. The master of the house, in a firm but calm tone, asked for the person to be admitted. "Let her in," he said, waving his hand to the butler. A few seconds later, a young woman with a pale face and distressed eyes crossed the threshold of the dining room. She was simply dressed, but her expression indicated that what she had to say was truly important. Pedro stood up immediately upon seeing her. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Jessica," he exclaimed, visibly upset. Jessica was the daughter of the Navajo chief on the reservation, a close friend of Pedro and Isabel. She greeted them briefly upon entering. Isabel squeezed her husband's hand under the table. He silently returned the gesture, remembering his promise to remain composed. Jessica, still standing, looked directly at Pedro and said in a trembling but determined voice, "I'm sorry for interrupting, but I couldn't wait any longer. Pedro, it's about the reservation. Something terrible is happening. The son of the agent in charge and his friends are taking advantage of the fact that it's time for the buffalo hunt ceremony. They entered the reservation because they knew that, at this time, only the elders and the women remain. These evil men are looking for the young women. You can imagine their intention. That's why I've been looking for you everywhere, to ask you to come with me and help us stop this abuse. We can't allow them to continue taking advantage of our young women." The silence in the room became almost unbearable. Jessica took a deep breath, her eyes filling with tears. A murmur ran around the table. The host stood up, his expression serious, and said, "Pedro, if you need to leave, we completely understand." Pedro nodded slowly. Before leaving, his gaze met Isabel's for a moment. There was no hatred, no reproach, just a deep weariness, and a final goodbye. Isabel felt a knot in her stomach. She knew that night could end in a scandal, but she never imagined it would be over something like this. In that moment, she understood that this would be a forever goodbye.